I guess I'm going to have to withdraw my endorsement of these Central Pneumatic Harbor Freight spray guns. That one that I used worked okay. I'd had it for quite a while here on the shelf waiting for this. I don't remember when I bought it, but it's been 4 or 5 years ago or more. The pattern on it wasn't the best. I wouldn't want to use it for good paint, but for this polyfiber stuff it worked fine for that. It got so the spray pattern wasn't as good as it was when I started, but it was still acceptable. But it started leaking someplace, and it was kind of a pain because paint would build up on it someplace and then it'd flop over onto the airframe when I was painting and kind of make a mess. But anyway, it finally started deteriorating down, the spray pattern down to the point where I threw it away after I got done with that last coat of polytone on the airframe. And I'd bought 5 of these brand new ones and had shipped up. They were on sale for 10 bucks a piece. Earlier I pulled one of them out and tried to use it. This one here, I tried it and I couldn't get this adjuster, this fan spray adjuster, to work at all. It wouldn't adjust, and then I couldn't get the volume to adjust, and it was leaking air out. Well, this packing nut here for the throttle, for the needle valve here, was loose, and it would almost blow your hand off of there. It was blowing air. I tightened it up and it worked better, but I still couldn't get the volume to adjust right on it. It was leaking too and blowing air out down here, and I couldn't get it to adjust. So I put it aside and I used that other one, and then after I threw it away, I decided I'd try that again, and I couldn't get this one to work again. So I got out another one, and this one worked a little bit better. This packing gland here was still really loose, and I tightened it up, and it's leaking air out of all these fittings on here, and they won't adjust anymore. I could probably take them apart and maybe put some thread sealer on them or something like that and get them tightened up. But the fan pattern on this one worked okay. You couldn't shut it down all the way, but it would spread out, and it did have a fan pattern, and it would adjust the paint volume. But again, it was leaking out here someplace. Tried to take this nozzle off to see if I could tighten it up and maybe clean out in there, but I put that in the vise and used this little wrench that was supplied with these older ones. They're not supplied with the newer ones. Now, see how rough the threads are on that thing. I tried this wrench on there, and it just basically sprung the wrench. I couldn't even get that nozzle to come out at all, so you're not going to be able to clean these. Well, anyway, I put that one aside, and I got out the third try on that, and that one has a good spray pattern, and it still leaked. This nut was still loose in the packing gland. I tightened it up. It has a good spray pattern on it, and it's not leaking out anywhere here so far. It is leaking air out in some of these fittings, but I'm going to go ahead and try to use that one for this last little bit of the polytone stuff for the control surfaces. Well, anyway, 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4. I don't know, kind of disappointing. Even that one's not working right. I hate using my DeVilbiss for this poly spray stuff because it seems like it eats these up when you use them. Even when you take them apart and clean them regularly, it's hard on them, but can't trust these anymore. And I can't take it back either. I mail ordered it, and the nearest store is 1,000 miles away, and it'll probably be at least 6 months before I get to go down to one, so any warranty is off on them. And anyway, I pull my recommendation off for those. If you're close to a store, go buy a few of them, try them out, find one that works, and take the rest of them back. Okay, I'm definitely rescinding my recommendation of these Central Pneumatic spray guns, especially these 47016. I went through 3 of those, 4 of those, trying to get one that would work, and I finally got one that had a decent spray pattern, but the lids on them leak. Every one of them was leaking out of the lids, and I thought at first maybe it was something I was doing, getting them on there cockeyed or something like that, but every one of them was leaking out of the lids, and I tried all kinds of numerous things there. Screw this on, unthread it until you get it on there flat and screw it on, and I was checking, it was going on there straight, but every damn one of them was leaking. Fortunately, doing these controls, I was doing vertical surfaces, so I didn't spatter any on the surfaces, but I got it all over me, my hands, my shoes, the floor, every place, and all to go over the gun. It's just a mess. The old gun that I was using, it was sealing tight right up until the end, and then it started spattering a little bit coming out of the cap on it. But nothing like these new ones. These new ones, just, you can't tip it sideways at all. You try to get a spray on the edges of things and stuff like that, or underneath, it just runs out. They're just terrible. I noticed every one of them was leaking like that when I was trying them out, and I thought maybe there was something else that was leaking on them, or maybe I didn't have the lids on straight or something like that. But that's not what the problem is. They just don't seal down tight. You like making a mess, I guess they're fine. That sucks. I'm kind of disappointed in that now. They got my first coat on these, they say they're control surfaces, but one of them is the lower door half. But I got the first coat of white polytone on these. I decided to do these a little bit different. I brought those stands out that I made and set those up, and just brought 4 pieces down. I brought the rudder, the door half, and the 2 horizontal stabilizers down and hung them up. And I did that. I wanted a little more room to get around them so I could get around them better and get better angles on them and stuff. So I'll do these 4 pieces first, and then I'll bring down the 2 elevators and do them. I'll let these set up a little bit, and then take them back up to the hangar or the basement and hang them up until they cure out, ready for paint. Got the elevators in here hanging up, getting ready to paint. I'm gonna spray those with polytone. I went ahead and took the other control surfaces, the 2 horizontal stabilizers, the door half, and the rudder, and took those up to the house to hang them up to get them out of the way. This gives me a lot more room in here to work on these. I don't have to squeeze in so tight to do this. Had to re-tape these because I'd taken the tape all off of them, intending finish color to be the last coat on these, but since I'm going to put the polytone on them, I went ahead and taped them back up again, and then scraped them down a little bit with some sandpaper, some 400 grit, just to make sure and knock down any of the little nodules and stuff off of them, and they were in pretty good shape. And I wiped them down with a damp cloth and dried them with a towel, and then went over them with acryliclean to clean off all the fingerprints. Now, fair warning, acryliclean does not work to clean blood off. I had a couple of little spots on there I thought might have been rust or dirt or something that got on there, and I couldn't get them to come off, and finally realized I poked myself with one of those wires or something when I was making the hangers for those, and must have got a little blood on it. Anyway, we got that off and all cleaned up and ready to go, so I'll let this acryliclean flash off here. Got the fan going and got everything all cleaned up in here in the room, and I'll go mix up the polytone and we'll squirt these things. I'm just going to leave these hang right in here when I'm done with them, and these will be the first things I cover with the finish color when we get ready to paint the finish color. I've got some other things to do for a few days, so we'll let these things all cure off, flash off, dry out, whatever adjective you want to apply to them before we put the finish color on. And well, I got the coat of polytone, the white polytone on the 2 elevators. No hits, no runs, no errors. No fault of that stupid paint gun, because that cap still didn't close on it, and it was slopping paint all over the place out of the cap. But it didn't get any on the elevators and the surfaces that we were worrying about anyway, so they look really good. Oh, now all we can do is let those cure up.